and happy Sunday to you. It's Sarah from Funky Fossil here, and I'm back to do some more crafting with you today. This is going to be part two of the video that I shared last week, where we were making some really kind of fun, cool collage papers. We kind of dyed them with acrylic inks, and then we just did some kind of patterns over the top to give them a little bit of variety and interest. And this is one of my ways of creating cohesive sets of collage papers in the same color palette that are going to work nicely together when I'm building a project. So you can watch that video back. I'll try and remember to put the link in the description box below. And I want to still create some more papers in this overall palette for my project, so I thought I'd share that with you too. And part of that is going to be using gel plate. I've got an 8x10 here, but any size of gel plate will do, depending on what size you like to work in. And what have I got to print on? I've got next to me, I've got some wet strength tissue paper. I've got a lot of it actually, more than I'm going to need. So this is fabulous tissue paper for picking up detail on your gel plate. But because it's wet strength, it means it is less fragile and it will take the acrylic paints, and you can still move it about and manipulate it without risk of tearing. I've got some book papers, just plain book papers here, and I've got some copy paper. And also I've got a few of the papers from last week's session, where I thought actually it might be quite nice to add a bit of gel printed detail over the top of them. So this is how that kind of collage paper builds. Sometimes you're just putting colour down and then you put some pattern down at a later date, depending on what it is you feel like doing. So these papers all provide a nice base for some gel prints. I have got, in terms of stencils, I thought I'd use this fabulous stencil mask called Scribblicious, because it works great on the plate and gives you fantastic abstract prints, which work really nicely in collage. And I've got one of our brand new stencils, which only went on the shop, I think it's on Friday, which is our Fern Silhouettes. It's an 8x8. So that'll be a nice one to use on the plate. In fact, as you can see the state of it, I have already been using it. I've done a few prints already, just very basic prints. And the gel printing I'm going to do today is basic. There are lots of amazing gel plate artists out there and lots of videos for you to watch. So I'm not pretending that I'm doing anything particularly revolutionary here. This is just another stage in how I build my collage papers. Here's one with the fern prints with some pan pastel, which is one of my favourite things to do on gel plate. And another one all on the wet strength tissue paper. And you can see there on this one, I did it after I did the pastels, and they're kind of still left on the plate as a ghost print, so that adds another layer. And to be honest, that is one of the reasons why I do like to use the gel plate for collage papers, because I could simply paint papers, or I could get plain cardstock, for example, that in the colour way that I want to use. But with a gel plate, you're going to always get some level of interest and texture in the print that you pull. So even, and I will do a few of these, even when you're just pulling plain prints, as in just a plain colour on the plate, that will never translate into a completely flat painted surface. So I do find, even if I'm just rolling paint off and taking kind of solid prints, I like using those in my collage. The other two things I was going to have a play with today on the plate was bubble wrap, of course, 'cause I love this bubble wrap. It's a nice big chunky one. And also a Lego plate, which I got out of one of the boys' old stash of Lego, and that makes a great pattern on the plate. When you press it in, it will remove the paint and gives you a lovely effect. So they'll appear as well, I'm sure. Now, as you can see from the papers that that I was showing you just a second ago, there is a lot of green, which is perfect because that's kind of what I want to be the dominant colour in my collage when we finally put it together. But I do obviously, when you're trying to look at your collage papers, you want a range of values from lights to darks, and also some degree of colour variation. Even I like to keep my palette limited, but you do want to have some variation in colour. So the colours I've got next to me for the gel plate are very much in that earthy palette that I'm looking to achieve. They're all actually, on this occasion, they're all the Pebeo studio acrylics, which you can get in the UK, you can get from Hobbycraft at a really good price, and they work great on the gel plate. They've got a nice body to them. So I've got a burnt sienna, I've got a burnt umber, I've got some gold, if I'm feeling of adding a little bit of shimmer. Buff titanium, which is one of my go-to pickup colours. I have got some green earth, which will work obviously with the greens that we've got already. I've got some Payne's grey, which is a bluey grey, and I do like that as well as as an alternative to black. And I've got some white as well. So I might do a little less of the green in this session so that we've got choices when we're doing our final collage, and not everything on the table is in that same mid-range of green, because they're all the papers I've got at the moment are all quite they're in lovely colour, but they're all relatively similar, I can see here, in terms of tone. So I'm wanting to try and create some variation in terms of lights and dark to give me some more choice. So that's all the preamble, that's the setup. Copy paper here, I've got my brayer. Obviously the copy paper I use for both picking up prints but also rolling off when I'm trying to get some paint off the brayer. Um, my gel plate, and I'll do one or two prints where I'm just talking through my thought process, but then we may well speed up while I do a few more, because you can never just stop at one or two gel prints. It is the law. So I'm going to get myself set up and we'll get back for a gel printing session in just 1 second. Okay, let's warm up by putting some light buff titanium on our plate. Just roll that out, kind of lifting the brayer with each roll, so it's redistributing the paint around the plate. One of the things I really had to kind of learn with my gel printing is it's all about thin layers, so you don't want lots of paint on your plate. You'll be pulling thin layers up. So I've got some wet strength tissue paper here, and you can see I've got that all creased. I always do that with my tissue paper. I like to think it adds texture to the final piece. And that, because it's just got one layer of paint, that will just pull up very quickly. Contact across the plate, just with my hands. And you can see that's just picked up nice and cleanly from the plate. You might be able to see here these kind of circle designs, which are with the pan pastels I'd been using previously. And although they're still visible, you can hardly see them, if at all, on the print itself. So don't be distracted if sometimes you look like you've got things on the plate. Sometimes they just stain a little bit, and this will wear itself off, to be fair, but it doesn't always translate into the print itself. Well, that actually is quite cool when it does, but don't always need to feel you've got to start with a clean plate. I like to just keep building, and sometimes you get really unexpected things that start to emerge as a result of that. Right, let's put some burnt sienna on. put a relatively reasonable blob of paint, but not, hopefully not too much. Probably a bit too much there. I am heavy-handed with my paint. It's a lovely colour, isn't it? Like a brick. There. So I'll put, I've got a couple of the masks, these scribble masks. These work great on the plate. So I'm just going to put them randomly to get a kind of quite an abstract print. And I'm going to put the same tissue paper over the top that we've done. We've pulled the buff titanium off because the mask, the mask that I put down on the plate now, will block paint being picked up in that area. So hopefully we'll get the contrast, we'll get the buff titanium appearing as the design and the kind of sienna around it. You see I'm pushing in here with my fingers everywhere I can get contact with the plate. That's why tissue paper is great for this type of activity, because you can see the design you're working with and it's thin enough to go into the spaces that the mask is leaving. Let's have a look. It doesn't matter if it doesn't pick it all up, because it just means the second pull will be interesting as well. I think that's enough there. Let's see. And you can see by the fact there's not a lot of paint left in these spaces that it's being picked up on the plate here. So this is what I mean. The first layer we pulled, the buff titanium, has been left exposed by the mask, and then the colour we put down on this layer is what's surrounding the design. How cool does that look? I like that one. So when we lift this up, the masks, you can see that the mask has kind of trapped some of the paint. So this is when you can get a really cool ghost print where I can now put paint, excuse me, I can put another layer of paint over the top of this and pull it up, and we'll get that line art design. Now, you want the paint that you've trapped to be dry, because if I put paint over the top of this now, when it's still wet, it will just all smush together, and and you'll lose the definition of the mask. So before you put your next layer of paint on, you want to just be sure that everything is dry already, and it dries really quickly, to be fair. We're not doing anything too complicated here. Wondering what I think I'll play it safe and put some buff titanium down over the top. I think there's some residue there. I don't want to translate onto the print. There we go. So, got very dirty hands now. So, we're covering over the paint that's been left behind. And try, if you can, to get this layer that you're applying thin enough that you can just see the design that you're picking up. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but I can see the design underneath, so I know that this layer is thin enough to pick up. So go back again. And just push this down. Now, quite often I would leave this on a plate just for a minute or two, just to give the opportunity for the layer that we'd allowed to dry on the plate to get picked up. But I think we'll be able to get them both in this pull. But that is one thing to kind of think about. The more layers you've got on your plate, when you're looking to pull them up, the more drying time you want to leave before you remove that paper, just to allow enough time for them to get soaked into the surface that you are printing onto. This has picked up nicely. Can you see? I've got that one. So we've got two prints from just effectively the same stencil and application of that original sienna. So I'm sure those of you that gel print already, this will be both something you do regularly and also you will know how addictive it is, because that's the joy of it. So let's put some green down now. And again, you'll find with your acrylic paints, they've got different levels of opacity. Quite often the kind of the better brands will indicate whether or not a paint is opaque. Now, to be fair, you are putting thin layers down on your plate, so even when it says opaque, if you're layering it up over other colours, you probably will be able to see beneath it. But it is worth playing around with the level of translucency that you can get from different paints and how they interact with each other in layers, because sometimes it's quite hard to predict, really. So I'm just putting my stencil straight down onto this plate here, onto the green paint, and I thought we'll just do some nice ferns directly onto this page, so that will lift the paint. We'll do this one as well, and we'll get a solid band hit there. And remember, we're talking collage papers, so we're not looking at trying to create perfect compositions that will go straight onto a page. These are things that we're going to use segments of and cut up. So with your gel prints, if you've got bands of colour or parts of print, or the pull isn't as perfect as you would have ideally wanted, I'm fairly sure there'll be areas of that you're still going to be able to use in your collage. So that's one of the things that make gel printing and collage such a nice combination. Now, this book paper's thicker than the tissue paper we were using previously, so I'm finding it harder to feel how much of the stencil design I've picked up. So obviously that's a solid band. I mean, I just think that looks cool in itself, to be fair, but I think that means we're getting a decent amount of the stencil up. Let's have a look. So yeah, it's not a great print, but that'll work nicely actually in a collage, because when we start to cut areas out of it and put it alongside the more solid green papers, that will work nicely. And it has also picked up. Let me just. I think it's picked up most of the paint from within the ferns, but I'll just give it another little This isn't about getting print, this is just about cleaning up the remainder of that paint. You can see just a few little bits that I managed to get with the tissue paper. So we shall see. So what I'm going to do now is start to speed up the video. And I'm just going to be rinsing and repeating this. So hopefully you'll be able to see the layers I'm putting on, whether I'm using the stencils or the bubble wrap or whatever to create a pattern on the plate, and some of the prints that we pull as a result. And we'll come back at the end of that to have a look and see what we've produced. So I shall be speeding it up from here on. Right, I'm going to call it a day with the gel plate because I could carry on for hours, and there's only so many collage papers I'm going to need for this project, and I've already got way too many, I'm sure. So here's just a quick recap, and you can just see the variety of different finishes that you get here. So I really like this one in terms of just the very simplicity of it, with the kind of almost pulling out the ferns from the stencil onto the book page. That would be a nice fresh one to use in between the more painty papers. This is one I did off camera, but again, you know, you saw me do enough of them to get a sense of how we're able to pull that print. A bit like the white one I did, which was just to clean the plates. These are what I mean about the solid papers, anything but solid. They're picking up the textures and the wrinkles and the trapped paint that's been left on the plate. So with the green and the white, these are going to be great collage papers. And if you pull a print like this and you don't necessarily want to go back over it with another layer of paint, then this is a great one for doing mark making and doodling on, like we did last week. So it's lovely to have some of these prints in your collection as well. We've got scribble stencil here with the bubble wrap in the background. Think I did this one off camera, but this was actually, I did this one over. I did the fern print with the gold, which it didn't give me enough contrast, so I just then went back over that with the scribbles, and you can see some detail in those lines. So again, if you get a print that you're not entirely happy with, you just carry on printing over the top of it, and you get different elements showing through. I really like this one. This was the Payne's Grey, and I bought in it's a greenish yellow from Amsterdam, but it's a really kind of a bit more of an acidic yellow, which I think might work well to give us a bit of contrast in the collage. Just some kind of bits that we picked up on the plate as we were going. This was our shapeshifter stencil, where we'd already taken the colour out of the stencil, and we're using the kind of outline that remained on the plate, and the smart Lego in the background as well to add a bit more interest. This was the pull we did before we got to the Lego version, and I like those neutral colours. So hopefully that buff titanium and the Payne's Grey might add a bit of contrast somewhere in our collage. And these were the two that I started with, I think. The solid and then the ghost. And finally, we've got a piece of our large bubble wrap, and I picked it up with gold, which you can see in person. I don't know if it's going to catch it on camera. So we've now got these papers to add to the ones that we made last week. And so next week we will start to put these together into a finished project. So hopefully you'll have a go at doing some gel printing if you have a jelly plate, and start to continue on with the colour palette that you've already started to make your collage papers in. So you've got a further type or different kind of texture to bring into your finished collage. And next week we'll see how these all work together and make sure we've got enough variety in the papers that we've produced so far. I think we kind of have. I think, you know, when we're going from this to this, with all the greens we did last week, I think we're going to have enough to get straight into collage next week. So I hope you've enjoyed watching my very simple gel printing process, and that it's been helpful in getting you started and getting you producing more collage papers for the next stage of our project. So I shall see you again next week when we start to build on what we've got so far. If you enjoyed the video, please do like and subscribe to my channel, and I very much look forward to seeing you next Sunday for a bit of collage. Take care, have a fabulous week. Bye for now.